Do you have a view of Jim Jordan's current predicament and unable to secure the speakership?
I ache for him. No. Zero. None.
Mr. President?
You know things are bad for Jim Jordan when even the President of the United States is embarrassing you. This is Biden during his overseas trip to Israel, referencing Jim Jordan's second consecutive day failing to secure enough votes to become Speaker. On Monday, he garnered only 200 votes, losing 20 Republicans, which seemed pretty bad until we got to Tuesday, where he garnered 199 votes, losing 22 Republicans. And look, I'm not much of a math guy, but it doesn't seem like the numbers are trending in the right direction for Jim Jordan. And that's a point that's being driven home even by his own fellow Republicans.
Do you see Jordan getting to 217 anytime soon, or do you think he's going to keep doing worse and worse?
I believe he's done. He needs to withdraw from this. He's going to lose more votes tomorrow. I know it. Already have. I know who's going to cross over and change. He doesn't have any pathway forward to 217.
Granted, not every Republican is being forthright about what's happening here. Some Republicans, very rightly recognizing how this continued dysfunction makes their party look, have now resorted to blaming Democrats for what's happening in the House.
McCarthy was never in a hole this deep.
But Speaker McCarthy was elected, and he was the Speaker of the House. He was the largest Republican fundraiser ever for us as House Republicans. I mean, the Democrats knew what they were doing when they put up 208 votes to take him out of the speakership, and that's what created the current situation that we're in. So then we had a conference meeting.
They didn't take him out of the speakership. I mean, you guys are the majority. But you guys are the majority, right?
96% of the votes came from Democrats, though, Brianna. I mean, just factually speaking, there were only 8 Republicans. And there were 208 Democrats. I mean, 208 Democrats.
But, sir, who's in the majority?
Well, the Democrats were the majority of that vote. And when we have a very
who's
small
in the
margin,
majority in the House of Representatives?
the Republicans are in the majority, but the Democrats provided the majority of the votes to take Kevin McCarthy out of the speakership. In fact, they provided 96% of the votes.
Republicans provided the key votes. They're in the majority. They can provide enough votes, obviously, to put a Republican speaker
Brianna,
in
the
place.
Democrats provided 96% of the votes. 208 Democrats voted to remove the Republican Speaker of the House. 8 Republicans voted to remove the Republican Speaker of the House. So 96% of the votes came from Democrats to remove the Republican Speaker of the House.
I will say, I find
the
it
largest fundraiser that we've ever had. They knew what they were doing.
It's some interesting verbal gymnastics. I will give you that. But I want to talk about the future here.
What do you mean gymnastics? I'm just talking about the facts. 208 Democrats voted. They were the vast majority of the vote to take Kevin McCarthy out of the speakership.
I'm talking about how it works. And that is that the majority in the House of Representatives, your party, is responsible for electing the speaker, not the Democrats.
We are.
Now, I've said this before and I'll say it again. It is not the Democrats' responsibility to vote for a Republican speaker. The Republicans have a majority in the House. And so instead of relying on the Democrats to do their jobs for them, maybe the Republicans should use the majority that they campaigned for and that they now have to elect a speaker from their own party. Remember, the Democrats had the exact same size majority in the last Congress, and yet instead of whining about Republicans voting against Nancy Pelosi, which they all did, Democrats acted like adults, coalesced around their Democratic candidate, voted for her, and got on with the business of governing. So maybe the issue here isn't that the minority party didn't come rescue you. Maybe the issue is that the majority party has a fundamental inability to govern. Instead of complaining, now might be a good opportunity for some introspection by Republicans. The other point worth noting is that it was Kevin McCarthy himself who agreed to a Republican rule that allowed only one member of Congress to introduce a motion to vacate. The Democrats didn't want that rule, but it was the Republicans who insisted. And then it was a Republican, Matt Gaetz, who used it to oust Republican Kevin McCarthy. And yet somehow, despite the rule being demanded by a Republican, agreed to and implemented by a Republican, and then used by a Republican, it's still the fault of the Democrats. How convenient. And it's a point, by the way, that AOC called out during our most recent interview.
Well, I think that Democrats tried to save Republicans from themselves. There was this entire rule that allowed for one member of the House to try to kick out the Speaker of the House was something that was adopted by Republicans in January of this year. Every single Democrat voted against this rule. We said this is bad for the institution. This is not going to be good for you all. And they didn't listen. They voted for this. They put this structure into place. And, all we can say is that we tried. We did try.
And of course, to watch the full interview with AOC, click the link right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. So now we head into day 3 of this Republican effort to do the bare minimum to try and elect a speaker to even be able to start the business of governing. This is basically the equivalent of a football team coming into the season, beating their chests about how great they're going to be, how they're going to be undefeated, and yet far from winning any championships, they can't even figure out who the team captain is going to be to go out onto the field to do the coin toss. We are 3 days into figuring out who's going to call heads or tails. And if that seems like a ridiculous analogy, it's not. What's ridiculous is that we have an entire political party, a major political party in this country, that managed to get themselves a majority in the House despite being too incompetent to know how to do the bare minimum required to start governing. That's the ridiculous part. But what's especially telling about what will be the 3rd day of voting is that Jim Jordan's spokesman has already come out and said that Jordan won't be withdrawing his name from consideration for the Speaker of the House. In other words, he was nowhere close to where he needed to be on the first ballot. He was then even farther away on the second ballot, and somehow Jim Jordan looked at that and decided, you know what? I have a mandate to lead. No person has gotten this few votes on a speaker ballot in over 100 years, true story by the way, and so clearly what needs to happen is that I continue to offer myself up as the savior of the Republican conference. The delusion would be funny if it wasn't so pathetic. But here's the thing. If this is frustrating or embarrassing for Republicans in the House conference, you have no one but yourselves to blame. This is what you get when you embolden election deniers. You get someone who denies the results of elections. Jim Jordan has been thoroughly repudiated by his conference, and yet because election denialism runs in his blood, and the blood of that party, he doesn't care what the votes say. He just blindly plows ahead because, just like his deity Donald Trump, he's decided that he's the savior, that the party needs him, that no one can lead like him, that he'll keep shoving himself down everyone's throats until they finally accept him. You've all heard the leopards eating faces analogy. Republicans were so content to push election denialism when it suited them, never thinking it would backfire. Well, guess what? It did. And now you're stuck with Jim Jordan and the abject humiliation that is coming from ballot after ballot after ballot of him rejecting the election results that could not be clearer. So look, I don't do predictions, but I feel pretty damn comfortable suggesting that Jim Jordan will very likely not be the next Republican speaker, no matter how difficult it is for him to accept objective reality. But regardless of what ultimately does happen, the fact that Jim Jordan was ever in serious contention to be second in line to the presidency is the most damning indictment of the Republican Party that you could possibly find. This is a far-right extremist who helped Donald Trump in his efforts to overturn the last election and who sympathizes with insurrectionists. He's passed 0 legislation during his almost 2 decades in Congress. He has authored draconian bills like a nationwide abortion ban, and he's best known for reportedly helping cover up the sexual abuse perpetuated by a teen doctor while he was the assistant wrestling coach at OSU. And yet at one point, 200 Republicans said, "Yup, that's our guy. This is our leader. This is who speaks for us. This is who should represent our party." Even if Republicans do manage to choose a speaker at some point, they've already proven that their judgment can't be trusted and that they're not a party fit for the majority. Although by now, that has already become abundantly clear. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.